Today, we have an interesting story. One lawyer told it by himself. He said, "As I turned 40, I thought about a big lesson I learned during my 10 years as a lawyer. A wise lawyer I worked with during a summer internship taught me three main duties: first to myself, then to the court, and lastly to the client. What made his advice unique was the order: always make sure you come first, and the client comes last." This seemed odd, but he warned that clients might not stick around, so it's crucial to prioritize oneself. As I went through the busy legal world, this lesson stuck with me. It became even more important when a tough situation came up years later. A company with lots of businesses and properties had a big problem when a building they owned caught fire. They needed insurance money, and a man named Frank, who was almost 60, thought he could handle it without a lawyer. He said lawyers were too expensive, and he was very careful about spending money. But as the insurance claim got more complicated, it was clear that Frank needed legal help. The company's interests were in danger, and the legal process was tricky. Remembering my mentor's advice, I knew I had to prioritize myself to protect my professional standing and the client's interests. Dealing with the legal details, I used my experience and careful thinking to navigate the challenges. Even though Frank was hesitant at first, he soon saw the value of having a lawyer. This experience reminded me of my mentor's lessons and showed how important it is to put oneself first, especially when clients might not appreciate their lawyers. This taught me to balance taking care of myself with doing my job well. While it might seem strange for a lawyer to put themselves first, it's a way to make sure you're not ignored or taken for granted. It doesn't mean ignoring the client, but it's about making sure you keep your professional integrity strong. In a job like mine, where trust and reputation matter a lot, it's crucial to face problems while thinking about yourself too. Looking back on my experiences, I see this lesson isn't just for work. It works in different parts of life too. It's about understanding how essential it is to take care of yourself while also doing things for others. In simpler words, when you have a job like mine, it's important to handle challenges while making sure you're okay. This lesson isn't only about my job as a lawyer. It's useful in all parts of life. It's like realizing you need to look out for yourself while still doing things for others. Balancing both is the key. The journey through the legal world has been a big change, especially because of the advice from that experienced lawyer. He said to prioritize yourself before the client, and even though it seems strange at first, it turned out to be really smart when faced with real challenges. In a crucial point in my career, I had to deal with a big trial that needed all my attention. That's when I met Frank again, the confident guy I knew before. He always acted like he knew everything, almost too sure of himself. Even when I tried to help him understand the complicated legal stuff, he ignored me, thinking he had everything figured out. I tried to warn Frank about potential problems with the insurance company. They might not be on your side, I told him. But Frank, always optimistic, didn't take my warning seriously. He thought he had it all covered and that his relationship with the insurance person was perfect. The things got intense when I told Frank about the deadline for taking legal action, which was approaching fast. If he missed it, he couldn't sue anymore. I really pushed him to file a lawsuit quickly so he could solve the problem and get his money back. But it seemed like Frank wasn't paying much attention. He acted like he could handle everything without a lawyer. I got busy with a 2-week trial, and Frank and his insurance issue were out of my mind. Time went by, and I didn't hear from him for a month. I started doubting myself, wondering if I misunderstood how serious his situation was. I thought, maybe Frank knew what he was doing. Just when I thought Frank had sorted out his insurance claim, he called me. I expected good news about getting his money, so I congratulated him right away. But Frank's response surprised me. He didn't know what I was talking about. It was clear my optimism was too early. Frank didn't know about any solution, and he even asked for a copy of the claim, making me worried. Confused, I asked Frank, "What claim?" He mentioned the one against the insurance company. My heart sank as I realized the insurer hadn't done what they were supposed to, just like I warned Frank. He hung up suddenly, leaving me shocked. Shortly after, an email from Frank appeared on my computer. He seemed worried about not getting a copy of the claim and urgently asked for it. I replied quickly, pointing out the problem. I said, "I guess the insurer didn't pay you, just like I said." Now that the time to sue has passed, they basically said tough luck, and you're facing a big loss. Is that what happened? My message showed both frustration and a hint that if Frank had listened to me earlier, we might have had a chance to fix things. Realizing the seriousness of the situation, I decided to involve higher-ups. I emailed Frank's boss, his boss's boss, and Bill, the client's in-house counsel. Bill responded quickly and set up a call the same day. Bill admitted, Frank messed up. We know that. He's an idiot. So what do we do? Bill was straightforward about Frank's mistake and wanted advice on how to handle things. It seemed Frank's excuses didn't convince anyone that he knew what he was doing. Looking back, I saw my own mistakes. I should have acted sooner when Frank ignored my warnings. But back then, I thought carefully about not causing problems with the client. As things unfolded, I realized it's important to balance being a professional and keeping good relationships with clients. In the legal world, where seeing ahead is crucial, guiding clients while making sure they understand is a tricky skill. This situation reinforced my mentor's lesson about putting myself first in the legal field. It showed that standing up for professional judgment, even if it means questioning a client, is important. Balancing self-interest with the duty to the client is tricky, but essential for integrity and protecting both me and the client. As I go through my career, I remember this incident's lessons. It reminds me that in the complicated world of law, to protect my professional reputation is not just smart but a moral duty. The journey goes on with these lessons, committed to the principles of a responsible and ethical legal practitioner. The story of Frank and the insurance claim highlighted the lasting importance of early career lessons. The idea of prioritizing oneself, not in a selfish way, but to stay protected, gained new meaning. Balancing between helping the client and protecting my professional standing became clearer than ever. After this, I saw how lawyers help people. They take care of their clients and teach them about the law. Even though helping the client is super important, lawyers also need to explain things clearly to them. I learned this from a story about a guy named Frank. As the lawyer journey continued, I promised to talk to clients better. It's not just about giving them legal help. It's about making sure they understand everything. Frank's story showed me how important it is to talk clearly and take strong action when needed. In a world of big business and tricky laws, a simple word, nope, started a big story. A guy named Bill explained that Frank, who was in a big company, got into a lot of problems. They called Frank to a serious meeting to figure things out. But when Bill told the story, it seemed like Frank didn't do what he was supposed to. I got frustrated because Frank's story didn't match what I told him before. Bill said Frank was doing things that didn't make sense. It was like a puzzle, but the pieces didn't fit. So that's it then. Bill queried with a tone that hinted at a mix of frustration and disbelief. We just lost a couple of $1,000,000. The gravity of the situation hung in the air, the weight of potential financial loss looming large. In response, I attempted to assuage Bill's concerns by revealing a strategic move I had taken. Recognizing the possibility of Frank's missteps, I had initiated a claim against the insurer. The foresight to obtain proof of loss from Frank earlier had armed me with enough information to file the claim promptly. It wasn't a perfect solution, but it was a necessary step to mitigate the fallout from Frank's actions. "You sued without instructions," Bill exclaimed, his surprise evident. In the legal realm, taking legal action without explicit instructions is a significant breach of professional conduct. It exposes the lawyer to personal liability for any costs incurred by the opposing party, a risk that is not to be taken lightly. "Oops," I said. I sued even though I didn't get clear instructions. While I was talking, I sent Bill a copy of the claim by email. "It's not perfect," I admitted, "but we can fix it later." I didn't decide to sue without instructions lightly. I did it because the situation was urgent. "Phew," Bill said with a big sigh of relief. "Can I trust you with this?" I told him he could. I thought the insurance company was in a weak position legally, and I believed we could get money from them. But then things got surprising. A few days later, someone from the client's office who I didn't usually talk to called me. They had a problem and needed my help. I usually talk to Frank, I said, trying to understand what was going on. As they told me the story, it turned out that something big happened to Frank at work. He got called into a meeting, given a short letter, and then escorted out of the building. Security even walked him past his colleagues to the elevator and said goodbye in the parking lot. It was a major change for Frank, the end of his time with the company. I usually talk to Frank, I said again and again, thinking about how things suddenly changed a lot. Frank, who used to be a problem and made me frustrated, was now just a story. I thought about how working in a big company can be unpredictable, and even important people can face quick consequences. I didn't feel mad at Frank. The ups and downs at work, in a strange way, kept me from feeling sorry for him. Despite him trying to cause problems for me, I couldn't help noticing the irony of what happened to him. The person who took his place, almost like showing how unpredictable work can be, turned out to be a great addition to the team. This new colleague worked well without getting into unnecessary arguments, making work more peaceful. Looking at the big picture, the story became like a warning. Even though Frank leaving was a big deal for him, it was just a small part of my job. I ended up telling this story to younger lawyers while having casual drinks, maybe more often than needed. Over time, some stories become favorites, and Frank's story became one of them. Basically, the story showed how working in a big company can be unpredictable. Dealing with legal stuff is complicated, and it's crucial to be ready for unexpected challenges. As I kept dealing with legal battles, I remembered the lessons from Frank's sudden departure, a reminder that in business, being able to adapt and think strategically is really important. The next story is about polite, well-mannered petty revenge, involving a woman named Karen, who always seemed to be in a hurry and a bit inconsiderate. She was often seen pushing a large pram, overloaded with bags and with a child, whom the storyteller refers to as Buddha for anonymity, inside it. The storyteller's fiancé, Martin, had only seen Buddha walking once, as Karen was overly cautious about keeping her shoes clean. Karen had a habit of rushing onto the bus, even once almost knocking over the storyteller who was on crutches at the time. She also had a tendency to tell kids on the bus that young people have no manners. One day, the storyteller encountered Karen in a supermarket, where she nearly ran into him with her pram, and then scolded them to watch where they were going. However, the storyteller experienced a moment of schadenfreude when they learned what their sons, Marty and Kyle, had been up to. Apparently, Karen was known for pressing the bus stop bell at the very last second, often causing the driver to miss the stop due to traffic and parked cars. This would result in Karen getting upset about the potential mess on her pram. The storyteller felt a sense of justice in hearing about Karen's predicaments, given her previous inconsiderate behavior. Karen's behavior on the bus becomes a source of frustration, not only for the storyteller and his family, but also for other passengers and the bus driver. Karen had a habit of complaining about the drivers and insisting they turn around if they missed her stop. This often angered the other passengers. To address this, the storyteller's sons, Marty and Kyle, came up with a clever and polite solution. For several weeks, one of them would press the bus stop bell early whenever they noticed it was close to Karen's stop. They would then smile, wave at her, and wish her a nice evening as she got off the bus. This act of politeness left Karen in a difficult position. She couldn't scold the boys for being courteous, nor could she complain to the driver for stopping at her stop. One evening, the situation escalated. The bus driver and another passenger complimented Kyle and Marty on their good manners, mentioning that their parents had raised them well. This praise seemed to trigger Karen, who became very upset and lost her composure in the street. The driver simply closed the door and drove off, leaving Karen behind. Marty and Kyle returned home, bursting with pride over their clever way of dealing with Karen. Their parents, including Martin, the storyteller's fiancé, were very proud of them. When Martin asked what they would do the next time they were on the bus with Karen, both boys responded that they would do the same thing: press the bell early. They found a way to handle the situation with Karen in a fun and lighthearted manner, turning their bus rides into an amusing experience. With that, the storyteller concludes the tales for the day, suggesting that if the listeners enjoyed these stories, they could check out more on the channels linked. They promise more stories in the future, sharing these amusing and intriguing tales of petty revenge and clever responses to challenging situations.